going to make this week the last week of the sort of towards abstraction project. So I've been working on the Cubist still lives for a little while. If you'd like to carry on, I've pretty much got all the different still life things here. So if you wanted to get those out, that's absolutely fine. I think I've got everything that we had. There's some glue here, scissors, and we've got the papers and things like that there. Hi Sue, hello. So I've got, different colours materials there. If you want to, very welcome to use those. And these are some of the demos. And I thought I would also this month sort of cover a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about working outdoors.
Sorry I'm late. Taxi.
That's right, sorry.
Taxi was late.
Just talk a little bit about working outdoors, which we've done a little bit of. If it had been a brighter day, I might have done the demo outdoors, but it's not quite as bright as it could be, so I'll do something here very quickly. I thought I'd talk a little bit about equipment and the sort of things you could take out. So ranging from like the very smallest, more kind of instant sort of things that I use. So this would be like a nice pocket-sized sketchbook, and sometimes I'll take that out if I'm just going for a walk and I don't want to take too much equipment. And I can use something like a little tiny, this is quite an old one, but quite nice. There's some really even, somebody had one about half that size. So little tiny watercolour boxes. These are great for sketching. You're not going to be able to do brilliant watercolours with them, but they're fine for a sketch. These I find quite useful. They're like a brush with a bit of water inside it. And then you can just squeeze them and get a little bit of a colour going. Add a bit of green to this one. So maybe some green in there. So they're really good for sketching. It also means, because it's got a lid, just put it in your pocket, you don't have to carry a brush case around, so they're quite handy. And then what I do is when I want to change colours, you do need something like a bit of tissue paper, and just give them a little squeeze and squeeze that colour out, and then I'm then able to just pick up another colour. So at random, I think this is a blue. A bit blue. Yeah, so you can change colours relatively easily like that. I think once upon a time I did have a go at seeing if I could do a whole painting with one thing. What I also use these for is inks. It's quite nice if you've got some sort of liquid ink. This is like a brush pen with a little cartridge in. So this one actually does need a new cartridge. It's really running very dry. Get a line like that, and then you soften it out with this. Or sometimes I will just pick up a little bit of ink off it. And that's a way of very quickly getting a wash onto a sketch. Rather than having a pencil and laboriously toning it. I quite like quick methods of getting toned down. So that suits me really, something like that. So that's very lightweight, instant, portable, paint anywhere type equipment. And then going up from that, when I first started painting outdoors, I did actually use something a bit like this easel here. And I've made one or two of these trays. It's quite handy having some, you could just either sit down at a stool and have your palette on your lap. That's quite a good way of working. But before I'd made these, that's what I did. But if you want to stand up, it's quite nice to have some sort of tray to put your palette and your paints out on. But these sort of easels are quite nice. The downside of this is perhaps a little bit heavier, and they're quite long when you put them down. So if you're travelling on the trains or something like that, they're a little bit cumbersome in that respect. But that's what I started out using. I'll move this one out of the way. So what I use now is this sort of setup. I shouldn't move the chair, shouldn't I? The chair's there to stop people tripping up over my easels. Right, there we go. So this is it's sort of like it's a camera tripod. It's like a lightweight carbon fibre one, and it just attaches at the back here. So it has like a sort of clip under here but it's basically where you attach to the camera. I've screwed it onto the box.
That's so cool.
So this is a box I've made myself, but you can buy, they're a bit expensive, so that's why I've made myself my own one. But you can buy boxes like this, very similar, and they're nice and lightweight, and a lot of plein air painters use something like this kind of setup, basically because it's portable. Yeah.
Paul, where did you buy the tripod? Where did you buy
This one, I got it on eBay, but you can get a camera shop really, some sort of camera supplier. I think that this one is carbon fibre, and they're about 100 or so. There are cheap ones, you get aluminium ones, they're a little bit cheaper. We got this, I think it was new, but it's been unboxed, so it's got about 60, 70 pounds of this paper. But they're nice and stable, weighs about a kilo, so it's not too much to carry. It's a little bit of bounce, but nothing too much really. I tend to use some sort of board, so hardboard or MDF board. Most of my paintings are oil paints anyway, so I've made this little bit to put the oil paint on. I just put in my colours here. I use just a couple of lids from the coffee that we have for break time. A bit of Velcro, so that just sticks on there so it doesn't flap around. And there's like solvent in one and oil and solvent in the other, so like a painting medium in the other. I usually take this out with me as well, which is a brush wash. You could put your solvent there for washing brushes. You could hang it off here somewhere, but I tend to just have a little bit of solvent out and just wash all my brushes at the end. I'll do that. This little box is my brush box, and I use the lid and just rest any brushes I'm using. So I tend to not wash brushes very much when I'm painting. I just get another brush and have one colour on one brush and another colour on another, and that way it speeds things up a little bit. And then just these clips are quite handy in painting. That's just a bulldog clip here, and just one of these sort of like little clampy clips. They're quite good for just clipping on a bit of rag. So that's handy for just drying the brush between colour mixes, or if I've got to wash the brush and want to dry it. So that's really my kit that I take out. I tend to take all the solvents in an old wash bag, because quite often they leak, or so it's not going to go anywhere if it leaks. And quite often there's a bit of rag in there anyway, so if it does leak, it will fall into that. So that works quite well. Brushes, I take a spare, I think that's a set of brushes I'm taking, or a set of brushes, a spare set of brushes as well. But really I could get by with just that amount, that would be plenty really. Yep.
Paul, I know you usually stand when you're doing planet.
Yeah, yeah.
Or any time.
Yeah.
But what about the chair? What would be the lightest, best chair to buy if you were, didn't carry too much?
Yeah, just I suppose whatever you're comfortable with. If I'm sitting down, I just have one of those sort of foldable stools. I've got a couple in the van, the ones that just fold out. I've got one that's made out of aluminium, so that is really quite lightweight, but even the other ones aren't too heavy. So that is the easiest and most portable, probably.
Okay.
I think you need to be sort of comfortable. There are some people have got the ones with the 3 legs, like a little triangle. And they can be alright, but it can be a bit too low down. But really, it is whatever you're comfortable. If you prefer something with arms or something a little bit, stronger, then just whatever you're happy with. I tend to get a bit. I'm not really good at sitting down painting. Really, I can do, but I feel more comfortable standing up. I feel like my posture goes if I sit down. I get sort of all cramped up. It also means that you can stand back from your work if you're standing. But I'm used to standing. I think with the teaching and.
Maybe we should all try and stand because we'll get a better paint.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, some people, like Johnny stands, and you sometimes stand, don't you? Yeah.
If it's the bigger it is, it depends how big it is.
Well, that's true. Yeah, if you're working quite big, you feel too squashed in. Little work, so little works I probably could paint sitting down. But I think also painting outdoors, I feel like people more like to walk into me if I'm at this level. Whereas if I'm standing in the street or something like that, like some of the walking group will come down today. I don't think there's very many, but most of them do stand up. One or two will sit, but quite often people do stand, and you feel less vulnerable if you're standing.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more of a comfort thing.
When Joan and I went sketching once,
Yeah.
we were just along there, and I was sitting painting over the sea, and this family walked behind me and stood by those boxes, and they said, "Come on, Dad, that's rude." And when I went like that, it was empty. It was horrible.
You get a bit of that. You just kind of
You're
very nervous.
Yeah.
Curious.
Yeah. I think the very first time I did plein air painting, which was probably in Lee, and set up an easel, probably about 15 years ago. And I did feel a bit nervous, particularly because I know a lot of people around here. I'd already started teaching around here then. But then once you've done it once, you get sort of confident with it. And then sometimes I've been to places and I've just thought, I wonder if I could get away with painting there, like standing on the Millennium Bridge in London and things like that. And there's like an absolute, complete stream of people come towards me. And they find that people will actually just kind of come around here.
Yeah.
You find that a lot of places.
Yeah, that's right.
They just make you watch a safety video if you're.
That's right, yeah. When I went to Liverpool Street Station to sketch, I then found that I had to actually go and sign in and get permission to sketch there. And they asked me to watch a safety video. And so I was, so unusual. And quite often you do get moved on as well some places. Some places in London you think you'd be fine to paint, and they're actually not public places to set up. You can walk through them. And there's quite a lot of private land that you don't realise till you take your easel out.
Could you paint on that bridge? Was it?
Yeah. Well, what I did, I wanted to practice for when I'm painting, so I tend to just use thin paint, so thin oil paint. I do encourage other people to do that. So, I mean, all I've got here is a few vans out the window. But the nice thing is I can sketch them out, use the brush. I know this isn't very neat and careful. But the nice thing is it's easy to alter it. Which I know, like, if you can use a pastel pencil, which I'd also advise, but graphite will very soon get very slippery and slimy. So unless you're just doing a few quick lines and you're sure where they're going to be, I don't particularly advise graphite with oil paint. But yeah, I would probably sketch something out. I know this is very rough and ready. Good imitation of that. And then perhaps a horizon here. And we've got some hills in the background. But it's nice and easy to alter. You can just get a little bit of solvent, or my solvant, or just even a bit of rag or paper. And that should wipe back if I need to. If it's all too wet, you can just dampen it down a little bit, just blot it. And this is this has just got emulsion on it, so it will absorb a bit anyway. But I basically do my drawing like that, and quite often I will spend a fair bit of time. It might be 3/4 of an hour blotting out shapes of buildings and people and things like that, and whatever it might be. And then I generally work background to foreground. So I would perhaps work a little bit of the sky, which today is fairly grey. Just add a little bit of what I had this morning, and it's a little bit lighter here. With the oils, this particular border is absorbing the paint very quickly. So I could go like that, and then perhaps a slightly darker grey. We've got a bit of cloud here. Soften those edges out a little bit. And then basically just kind of work my way forwards. The next bit would be the land. Just using what we've got here. Work these areas in. So I've put blocks of paint everywhere, but whilst it's still wet, I can still work back into that So with this bit here, there might be some slightly lighter bits, so I can just add those and perhaps change the colour and the tone a little bit. So to an extent, I can put wet paint into wet paint. And I tend to go reasonably thin to start with, or just put the paint on and maybe just kind of scrub it into the board like that, so that I've got coverage, but it's not too thick, and that means that I can then put more wet paint over the top. And then for the details, I quite often use slightly longer head brushes that are a little bit softer and got a bit more spring. The boards, probably a canvas, you could use the bristle brushes more, but they look a bit scratchy sometimes on a smooth board, so I quite often use nylon brushes. But once you've got some paint on, I can then add, the details over the top of that. And it's picking a little bit of the colour underneath that. But I can usually keep putting colours on to an extent and work wet paint into wet. So that's basically generally how I would work. And ideally, if I can paint the whole painting in a couple of hours or a whole session, that'd be fine. If not, I will go back another time, finish it, or I'll get some photos out, take some photos and finish it from photos. I thought I'd just sort of share that with you, sort of my work. So all my equipment, I take a few tubes of oil paints out like that. They're all packed into that. It's got good stuff. And along with my brush, not brush, basically, board thing. This, I think I've shown you before, this is like a panel holder for wet panels. So that was the one I worked on last week in Mersey Island.
Wow.
So that needs a bit more work. But this, by the time I got to the end of this one, the tide had come in, so all this had gone. So that one needs another lift, particularly the foreground there. That's generally how it works. And then this will protect the paintings. This just about fits in with a rucksack with all the other equipment. But that kind of protects my work on the way home from getting smudged. Or if you that's something else I've made, but you could, another way is to, a lot of people put like a few matchsticks around the edge and just have two boards the same size, and then just tape them together with a bit of masking tape. So that's another way of getting wet oil paintings home. And it's probably the lightest way, just have at least two boards of the same size and some sort of spacer in between. So, that's a little bit on plan there. I've got a couple of sessions planned in Hadley Country Park on the 6th of June, so I think the week I'm back. Anybody's interested in that, that's a Friday.
Sorry, what day?
The 6th of June, Friday the 6th, so we can do a morning session at the Country Park in Hadley. So if anybody's interested in that, put your name down there. And a couple of weeks after that, I'm thinking to do one in Malden, which is quite a nice place to go and paint. So if you're interested in either of those, put your names now, and we'll run them. Okay.
What's the